Americans feeling very down on it, as we've been going over. Americans are getting walloped right now. CBS reports that Americans need an extra $11,400 today just to afford the basics, the average American household, just to get back to what the standard of living they had in January of 2021. And meanwhile, Americans are absolutely blowing through their savings. More and more Americans saying they just don't have the money anymore. A lot more credit card debt going on. For the update on this story, we turn to the guy we always turn to as our in-house economist and a research fellow at the Heritage Foundation, EJ Antoni, joins us. EJ, good afternoon to you, sir.
Vince, good afternoon to you too. Thank you for having me.
Now, it has to be good to see CBS finally coming around to admitting that Americans are poorer now. And I realize that you have a little bit different math than they do, but the same core point, which is that Americans are very much in the mode of having to play catch up now, aren't they?
Oh, 100%. And unfortunately, since June of last year, we've just essentially been on a treadmill, and people haven't been able to gain any ground back at all. In other words, yes, people's wages have gone up, but it's basically just equaled how much prices have gone up. So you're not actually any better off. So after a tremendous drop from January of 2021 to June of 2022, we've basically just been in a holding pattern ever since.
Yeah, it's a big deal. So the White House is still posting things to their Instagram account and insisting from the lectern that everything is fine. And in fact, I saw the other day that the White House posted that small business is booming in the United States. Would you agree with that assessment, that small business is booming?
Well, don't ask me. Ask small businesses themselves. And if you look at the small business optimism index, it has just absolutely collapsed under this president. It is at levels not seen in a decade. So the idea that somehow small businesses are doing well is just utter nonsense.
Yeah, I do think this strikes me as also sleight of hand. So, for instance, like everything the White House does, one of their claims they make is share of families owning a business is up by 9%, with large increases among Black and Hispanic households. You know, it's funny when they make a claim like that. I can't help but think these are people trying to make ends meet. Started a business. What does that mean? They did an Etsy shop. They have a Zazzle t-shirt store now. People are going out of their way to figure out ways to make additional money just to cover the shortfall. Am I right on that?
Well, there's a couple of things to remember. One, the number of small businesses just got absolutely crushed during the pandemic because so many people were told they weren't allowed to go to work, and we had so many supply chain problems, et cetera, that a lot of businesses simply went under and have never come back.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons why the numbers in terms of a percentage change look inflated today. But another thing to remember is that the info on the number of small businesses in this country is actually very delayed. So what we use is a figure from the Census Bureau that projects, based on new business applications, how many small businesses we actually have today. But the problem is that if you have a flood of new applications and a relatively small number of those actually turn into real startups that end up employing people, you're going to get an overinflated sense of how things are going right now.
So when the White House puts out a number like that, they're not talking about actual established small businesses. They're talking about people who have applied?
That's right. When we look at business formation statistics, those things are actually projections based on applications.
That'd be like somebody calling themselves a Pulitzer nominee because they paid the fee and submitted their story. Like, I'm a Pulitzer nominee. What is that? It doesn't mean anything.
No, but I mean, look at everything this White House talks about when they reference the economy. It's all utter nonsense. You know, just the other day, Biden was talking about how prices are still too high, and he was calling on businesses to stop gouging consumers and to stop being greedy. Mr. President, please explain to me how it is greedy for a business to increase prices by 17%, but to have its own costs go up by 18%. There's a reason why, adjusted for inflation, corporate profits have fallen on average for the last 6 quarters. If these businesses are being greedy, I think they're doing it quite wrong.
Yeah, and this whole, it's funny, since you brought up the topic, it's funny. The White House has been obsessed with this junk fees topic. They're like, we need to stop junk fees. We need to stop corporate companies from tacking on extra fees on you. And And if, on first blush, you hear that and you're like, yeah, let's stop junk fees. But all it means is it's just like, EJ, you tell me, you're the economist here, but when, it used to be when you bought an airline ticket, they would lump in everything in the same price. But then the airlines were trying to underbid each other for your business. So what they did was they strip out all the stuff that you would get normally, and then they put a really low price on the website, and they say, okay, look, you get the flight. But then, actually, if you want what comes with the flight, if you want the food and the drink and the luggage, and they just tack it on as extra fees. They make it seem like it's a la carte instead of what they had in the first place. So it's literally just a pricing mechanism designed to attract your business. But in the end, you're still going to have to pay that, whether it's a junk fee or not. Am I right?
Oh, 100%. And you can call anything you want a junk fee. It doesn't actually make it a junk fee. And at the end of the day, I don't think the person who has to pay it is really concerned with the nomenclature you're going to use. I actually testified in front of a Senate subcommittee earlier this year on so-called junk fees within the rental market. And some of the other people who were testifying were trying to pin the ridiculous increase in rent we've seen the last couple of years on these so-called junk fees, except that just doesn't stand up to the facts. When base rents have increased far more than the increases for things like trash collection or pest control or pet fees, whatever the case may be, it also doesn't at all explain the overall increase in housing, because it's not just rents that have gone through the roof. Right? It's the cost of owning a home that's prohibitively expensive today. Please explain to me what junk fees are involved when someone is trying to sell you their home.
Let me go back to something that was an exchange at the White House earlier this week. Fox News' Peter Doocy was asking Coringe about the fact that Americans don't think the economy is doing well, despite what she keeps on insisting. Her notes say it's doing well, so it must be doing well. She read it off the paper. And he says, but wait a minute, Americans aren't buying this. And so she blamed, you guessed it, Donald Trump. Listen.
But why do you think it is that when you say the economy is improving and President Biden says the economy is improving, that a majority of Americans outside of this building are not buying it?
So here's the thing. When we walked into this administration, the economy was on a tailspin.
What?
That is the fact. Because of the last administration, because of the Trump administration, because of how they dealt with COVID and the pandemic, because they didn't have a comprehensive plan.
And so we grabbed the throttle and we decided, let's crash the whole plane. What is she even talking about?
She's talking about a lie, in short. And I don't like using that word about public figures, but there's just there's nothing else you can call that. It's an absolute lie. The economy was in a tailspin. It was growing at a $1.5 trillion annualized rate. Inflation was a mere 1.4%. And in 18 months from taking office, this administration managed to not only deliver 2 consecutive quarters of negative economic growth, but to drive inflation so high that it was rising about as fast in a single month as it rose in the entire year before Biden took office. And that inflation has absolutely ravaged American families' budgets. I mean, Vince, it's so bad that people today are now using this buy now, pay later option in spades. We're talking billions of dollars more this Christmas season. If you look at how consumers are doing, they not only have over $1 trillion of credit card debt today, but 25% of Americans, a full quarter, are still trying to pay off all of the debt they accrued from their Christmas shopping last year. I mean, the idea that somehow things were terrible and have been made better, it's just laughable.
It's at this moment I want to remind people of the fact that Joe Biden at one point did admit that it was his fault that inflation was going up so high. And I don't think any other show on radio has ever played this clip as much as we have. I don't even know if they've ever played it. November 14th, 2021, Joe Biden, the Port of Baltimore, had this to say.
It can delay shipment of furniture or clothing, reduce worldwide supply, and driving up prices here in America. And the irony is people have more money now because of the first major piece of legislation I passed. You all got checks for $1,400. You got checks for a whole range of things. If you're a mom and you have kids under the age of 7, you're getting $300 a month. And if it's over 7 to 17, you're getting $360 a month, like wealthy people used to do when they get back tax returns. It changed people's lives. But What happens if there's nothing to buy, you got more money, you compete for getting it there, it creates a real problem.
It creates a real problem. There's nothing to buy because we printed all this cash and we didn't realize it would wreck the economy. That's Joe Biden admitting that, EJ.
Oh yes. In one of his few moments of mental awareness, he actually was able to put two and two together and put and and speak the obvious. I mean, it's absolutely appalling that these people who caused the problem and now gaslight the American people into not only trying to get them to believe that there is no problem, but that they're somehow part of the solution. I mean, you're one of your previous callers, Kevin, the crane operator. He really hit the nail on the head when he talked about just how tough it is out there for not only consumers, but for businesses too. And it speaks to just how out of touch our elites are, that they can talk about these problems the way they do.
Yeah, well, this is in terms of political liability, this is a massive one for Joe Biden. I mean, nobody, like maybe inside the White House, they think the economy is doing well or something. As somebody, one of Corinne's staff members or Corinne herself. But outside of that, people do not think this way. And you've got people of all ages who are just totally alienated by the state of this economy. And my goodness, please let it result in a changing of the guard so we can get out of this mess. But, these numbers are wild. I know one other piece here that I want to ask you about, EJ Antoni, because I know at its core you are a monetary policy guy. And you follow, especially the Federal Reserve and these interest rates. I'm seeing reports today that mortgage rates are going to hold at about where they are, at least through the next year. And they're way up from where they used to be under Trump. What do you see as you project forward with these interest rates and all of this debt?
Well, we've seen mortgage rates come down a little bit the last couple of weeks. We're talking, tenths of a percent here, no major jumps, but that's because the demand for mortgages has just fallen off a cliff. Nobody can afford a home today, not at these prices and these interest rates. Now, unfortunately, we don't have any good choices here because Treasury continues borrowing so much money. Either A, interest rates are going to have to stay high, or B, the Fed is going to allow interest rates to come down by creating more money. But then we're right back on the inflation bandwagon. So unfortunately, what that would do is then drive home prices back up. And so the actual amount it costs you to afford a home is not going to go down.
All right. EJ Antoni, again, research fellow at the Heritage Foundation, the in-house economist for this program. Thank you, sir. Good to have you with us today.